Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of The County Seat. Are you ready? Do you feel it? That's as much time as it takes for a 7.0 earthquake to completely annihilate a neighborhood. 7 to 15 seconds. We sat through 7. If that had just happened, what would you do? Would you be prepared? Would you have made it to safety? Would you have had a plan? Well, these are questions we should all be asking ourselves because natural disasters are always just a step away. You know the old saying, it's not if, it's when. It's when will the flood happen? When will the landslide happen? And we have been getting a flood of reminders about this lately. So we are going to dedicate the next half hour to talking about emergency preparedness, how counties, states, and federal government interact, and what part of that obligation lies with you, the individual. Because in those first few seconds, you are your only rescue. To get a little background on being prepared, we're going to start with a report from Dowsett.
Have you ever had this happen to you? You hear about Emergency Preparedness Month or the flooding in southern Utah and you think to yourself, I'm going to get prepared. So you run down the store, you get a 72-hour kit, and you put it in your basement. You're prepared now, right? Well, that's not 100% correct. And rather than find out that you're not prepared during an emergency, the time to find out is right now. Jeff Johnson agrees. Now, Jeff is with the State Division of Emergency Management, and he has a unique perspective on preparedness.
This has always been a passion for me, and that's because of what happened during these few minutes in my life. On June 12th in 1978, I was in Ishinomaki, Japan, and there was a 7.7 earthquake. During the earthquake, a table comes sliding across the room and slammed into the wall, and I thought, well, that's a good place to be. And so I went and jumped underneath the table without holding onto the table, and the table immediately headed back across the room the other way with me crawling after it, which comes to what we teach: drop, cover, and hold. Because people think they can get underneath something and be safe. Well, that something may not stay there in an earthquake.
There are a number of potential emergency situations, disasters, and crises. But what they all have in common is that they disrupt the lives of the people who are involved.
The subsequent things that happened during the earthquake is that we had no water, we had no power, we had no gas, and no phone. All the utilities were out. And they were out for a significant amount of time. The first thing that came back was the power after 28 days.
You may have a 72-hour kit, which is certainly a good start. But there is a mental component to being prepared. Having a plan can make a big difference when you find yourself in a situation where you are your only hope of rescue.
Easily, the make a plan is probably the most important. If you and your family are separated, how do you get back together? Where do you get back together? And how does that happen? Realize the phone lines might be down, so there's going to be no phone communication, either cell or landline. Your communication might not be possible. What's the value of having a plan on that day? The biggest problem we have with people is they think there's going to be help there immediately, and they don't have enough preparation to take care of themselves for an adequate period of time. We've all heard the 72-hour kit, but when we see the realities of disasters, it might be longer than that. So besides having some food and water for 72 hours, you might want to just start thinking in the terms of, I may be on my own for 1 week. To do really well for 1 week, what do I need?
Being prepared at home only covers you for the 50% chance that you are home when a disaster strikes. There is still a 25% chance that an emergency could occur while you're at work, and a 25% chance that you may be somewhere else altogether. So with that being said, where do you start?
Where you start cheap. Let's take that 25% chance of being elsewhere. What do you put in the trunk of your car? Simple things. You need to put in an old pair of hiking shoes or tennis shoes that you're comfortable of walking 20 or 30 miles in. On top of that, put some water in your car, put some edible items that will withstand heat and cold. Find an old coat that you're not using very much anymore and put it in a bag, an old gym bag in the trunk of your car with your boots.
Jeff doesn't just teach preparedness, He lives it. We spent some of our meeting looking at how he has prepared.
This is a 72-hour kit that was provided by my division. I have 5 gallons of water stored down underneath my desk here. In this drawer behind me on the bottom, I have enough food probably to last for a week. Things are really valuable post-disaster because somebody might be hurt. But again, I've gone the extra mile and have a CERT kit here, which is full of medical supplies. This is a good 30 below sleeping bag that actually has a Gore-Tex cover. Will keep itself dry. It's a military bag that I picked up on a military surplus online. People walk into my office and they smile about it, but I am very well prepared. I'm prepared to stay here, I'm prepared to leave, and I can probably stay here for up to a week, and I could leave, and I have the equipment I need to get home.
It's important to remember that preparedness is a mindset. It's not a kit that you keep down in your basement. It's a lifestyle that will keep you alive in an emergency. For the county seat, I'm Derek Dowsett.
Now you can sigh a little sigh of relief because you at least have a blueprint of what you need to personally do to be prepared to rescue yourself. When we come back, we'll find out how local, state, and federal governments enter into the picture and are part of the dance. We'll be back with the county seat on emergency preparedness in just a minute.
You go through the day-to-day repeating what you did yesterday. Don't you wish you could access that piece of your life that's missing? Find the beauty, serenity, family fun, or anything else that's missing from your life in the Cedar City, Bryan Head area. Gain access to your adventure, whether it's camping, hiking, the arts, festivals, or just a getaway. Visit cedarcityayl.com for details on all the adventures that you can access in scenic southern Utah.
Kanab, base camp for your southern Utah adventures. You belong in Kanab.
If you're looking for the center of the universe, well, good luck. Now, if you're looking for the center of the off-road universe, look no further than Paiute County. Hundreds of miles of trails turn your day of riding into a week, maybe even a month. Heck, a lifetime wouldn't be enough. Take off right from downtown Marysville or Circleville and experience fall colors that rival the most famous destinations in the world. There will never be a better time to ride the Paiute Trail than right now. Explore Paiute County and discover the magic and beauty of the land where the rainbow ends.
There aren't a lot of places in this world where you can feel truly free and wild, where the horizon invites you to set off on adventure. In Tooele County, you'll find just that. Explore the Benson Grist Mill and step back in time. Find yourself on a trek through our canyons. Tooele County. Experience endless horizons.
Welcome back to the county seat. We're talking about emergency preparedness for our topic today. It is Emergency Preparedness Month, so it's a good time to have this conversation. We now have the background on what good preparation should look like at an individual level, but we want to go on to the chain of command or the chain of aid and discuss that with our panel today. Joining us for our discussion today is the spokesman from Be Ready Utah, Joe Doherty. We have the Bureau Chief, the Utah Division of Emergency Management, Ty Bailey. And then we have Carbon County's Emergency Management Director, Jason Llewellyn. Thank you for joining us. You know, we've now talked about what you should have. Where does actual emergency service coverage come from? When does it start? What level of government is the guy that shows up at the door to start the ball rolling for you?
For us, an emergency starts usually with a 911 call at the very smallest local level. So at the city level in our county, it starts there. Generally the city responds to the emergency, whether it's police, fire, EMS, flood, what have you. That's where it starts. So with the people local, it's usually a cop at your front door, a firefighter showing up, or maybe an ambulance responder.
Okay, so let's say you know, the volunteer fire department responds to a flooding call in Wellington, and they roll out there and they see when they get there that this isn't just some guy's house, there's a problem. What's the next step?
Generally the next steps, they call an assisting agency or a neighboring jurisdiction. So Wellington would call Price City. Maybe they need help. With all agencies in Utah, with the exception maybe of the Wasatch Front and St. George, most responders are volunteers. So usually have 4 or 5 show up out of a department of maybe 12 to 15 in the middle of the night.
When do you get the phone call?
Generally after that. Just depends on the location and how it functions, but generally the cities are pretty self-resilient. And, you know, they bounce back really quick and they can handle most day-to-day emergencies. When I get the phone call is when the cities can no longer handle what's been asked of them. That's when they fall back to the county level and we respond. Okay,
and then what's the process when your resources become tapped? Because you were almost at that point here recently, weren't you?
We were beyond that point, correct. So we became tapped very quickly with the flooding that happened in Helper, Springland, and in the unincorporated portions of the Carbon County. We became overwhelmed almost immediately within hours. Our next resource was to go regionally, so we rely on our neighboring counties. What offer and what assistance can they have? At that point, exhausting all of our local, if you will, regional assets, we immediately call the state through our liaison program.
Yeah, and the state response happens sooner than a lot of people realize because we have the Highway Patrol, we have UDOT, sometimes local health departments that are extensions of the state government. So our involvement is right off the bat, but on the emergency management side, then we help with emergency information and additional resources. So whatever the county might be needing in assistance from other jurisdictions, other states, or from the federal government, then we go to work to try and help them with that.
We have about a minute left for this topic, and I'd like to know, you know, you hear about disasters being declared. That just doesn't start at the president and work its way down. How does that system work?
You know, it starts at the other level. It starts at the local level where if they appear to be overwhelmed, then they make a local state of emergency declaration, which then is often sent to the county. If the county is overwhelmed, they create a declaration and they send that to the state. And each of those declarations is really a legal document that says, yes, we needed help. And whether that help comes, it depends on what requests are being made, but those are legal documents that have to be made. And we want to make sure that people follow those so that the right chain of command is happening.
When the governor comes out and says we're declaring an emergency, that's at the point where there's some serious, I mean, there's a legal document that says the federal government is now being asked to help.
Absolutely, that grants emergency powers to those jurisdictions to be able to function in an emergency situation where they don't have to follow their normal procedures.
Excellent. Well, this is a great place to take a break. We'll be right back talking about emergency preparedness. We have a lot more to cover. If you've got friends that you don't think are ready for an emergency, call them during this commercial break and we'll see you after our break. We'll be right back.
Why is it that environmental protection and economic development are often placed at odds with each other? Well, in Duchesne County, they have both. Here, modern industry and resource development go hand in hand with some of the most pristine wilderness in the western United States. A strong economy balanced with a lifestyle of exploration and discovery. But don't take my word for it. Go visit them. Duchesne County, close enough for business, far enough to get away.
Here are a few things you can do to prepare. It's a good idea to have a fire extinguisher, a first aid kit, and at least a 3-day supply of water for each person in your household. Have an emergency plan. Empower yourself and your family. Be prepared.
Along Interstate 70 and Highway 89 is an area that is rich with high mountain peaks, vast forests, lakes, streams, historical sites, and a climate that is perfect for outdoor adventures, no matter what the season. Join us in Richfield, September 15th through the 19th for the Rocky Mountain ATV Jamboree. Sign up at atvjam.com. In the center of it all, Sevier County.
Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking about emergency preparedness. We have a very emergency-oriented panel with us today. We want to pick up the conversation. When we ended our last segment, we were talking about how declarations go forward. Just because a county commission will declare an emergency, does that mean that the help is there in 15 minutes?
You know, some help is already happening. That's the great thing that we actually saw happening in Carbon County, is how many people just came out and started helping with the cleanup. We love that when the communities come together and support one another. But when you're looking for help from the state or the federal government, those declarations, they definitely need to be made. But the first thing I think that people get wrong is they think that when there's a declaration, that means that help is coming and that money is being spent. And that isn't necessarily the case. At the state level, when we request an assessment from FEMA, what they're doing is they're doing a preliminary assessment to see if the damages that have happened, A, are eligible, and B, would meet certain thresholds that exist. So when you hear that, hey, FEMA's in town, it just means that we just need to do some fact-finding first to see if this qualifies for federal assistance.
If a disaster's declared, they're not going to show up with a construction crew and start fixing your house.
No, all things have to be done in order and really in a wise fashion. And having the correct facts will make sure that state and federal and local dollars are all spent wisely and appropriately.
The type of assistance, people have a lot of misconceptions about that. Just because FEMA's going to come, it doesn't mean they're going to build you a new home. And FEMA is the last resort after you've exhausted all other options, including your own homeowner's insurance.
They're not building you the new house. They're loaning you the trailer to live in while you rebuild your house. Is that?
It is, and I think that was one of the large misconceptions that we saw, especially even with local aid, as it starts, as we all know, disasters are declared locally. Even with us at the local level, it's hard for us to venture onto private property and to rebuild as a local government. State and federal laws prohibit even us coming in to help at that level. What we try to do are to offset those emergency needs that you have while you rebuild, just as FEMA does. So whether it's temporary shelters, maybe it's food for a day until you can get power back onto your house, or maybe it's just someone coming to inspect your house while you wait to see if it's safe to go back inside.
Okay, so right now I would imagine there are a whole bunch of people in our audience having an aha moment, maybe not a pleasant one, because they think that the government's role here is to make them whole again, and it's becoming obvious that that's not the role of government. That's the individual's responsibility. So what do they need to do to better be prepared for that happening? I mean, you know, it's what kind of things do they need to be looking out for?
Well, that personal preparedness is so important because government just doesn't have the money to rebuild everybody. And so personal preparedness, looking at your insurance, making sure, yeah, you have homeowners insurance, but do you need flood insurance? Do you need earthquake insurance? And those are some things that people definitely need to be looking at and see if they fit into their family budget.
I agree. I think understanding the hazards where you live is key to this. It would make no sense if you were to live in a hot, dry climate to have ski poles and winter clothing if it never gets below 60 degrees. So you really need to assess where you live in our state, because it's vastly different from an alpine to maybe a desert setting. So you really need to look. There's not a one-size-fits-all with a preparedness or a disaster
probably
kit.
Even within a community. The guy that lives up on the hill is probably in a very different position than the guy that lives down by the Price River.
It is. If you live on top of the hill, or do you live in the ravine where there's a flooding issue, that makes a huge difference in how you prepare and how you prepare your family for future events.
Although one other thing when you talk to the floodplain managers in our office, they say everyone lives in a flood zone. And even though it's not a FEMA declared flood plain, everyone has the potential for flooding. And it really doesn't matter where you live in the state, that can happen to anybody.
What else can people do as far as, you know, I can go and review my insurance, but I know I live in an unreinforced cinder block house. That probably doesn't bode well for an earthquake, does it?
No, not at all.
You guys aren't being very helpful here.
Sorry, Chad.
No. Well, some of the things you can do is, you know, make an effort. We have some CERT programs, Community Emergency Response Team programs, that teach you basic survival skills. Help your neighbor. One thing we were fortunate enough to see was neighbors helping neighbors long before government got there, whether it's police, fire, or EMS. That's where it really needs to start, is being educated and trained at the basic level to deal with those minor problems until someone can get in there to help you.
Well, I guess you should really become knowledgeable about the assets that you hold as far as real property, and you should know how to shut the gas off and
when to shut the gas off. That's another misconception, is that people think if an earthquake happens, I need to shut the gas off. Not necessarily. If there's damage to your gas line, make sure it's shut off. If you can smell or hear gas escaping, then shut it off. Otherwise, you really have to wait until your gas company comes and turns it back on for you. And that can take a long time.
Most cities and every county in our state has an emergency management program that can help you and identify those areas where you're vulnerable. That's what our job is to assess that, to know that about our public that we serve, and to help them assess the needs that they may have in those different vulnerability areas.
Everything's so individual, and I think just understanding your own hazards, what coverage you do have, and your own situation. When you make your own family plan, it is totally up to the individual, and everybody's circumstances is different. But that mentality of preparing yourself and your own family is the right step.
We have been talking about emergency preparedness. We've kind of now covered some of the areas that are misperceptions. Now what can you do about it? And that's where we will focus our conversation when we come back on the county seat. We'll look forward to the different resources that are available, events that are happening, things that are on the calendar that can help you and me and everybody be better prepared to help ourselves and our neighbors. We'll be right back with the county seat in just a minute.
I lived in Phoenix and then down in Orange County in California, and I met a small town girl and she brought me home. Just the smaller community that makes you feel like when you go somewhere you know everybody. You know, the sporting programs, the dance events, all these kinds of things, you run into people you know and that care about you and your family. And that makes it just a wonderful place to have little ones like this.
Isn't it time you found the balance you've been looking for? Uinta County, Utah.
Anything worth doing in this quiet little town?
You strike me as the kind of girl that likes a manicure and a massage.
I was hoping for something a little more vigorous.
Vigorous, I can do.
And I thought you'd be riding side saddle.
What? I'm gonna regret this.
What would you do with an extra day in Utah Valley? Explore the Wasatch Mountains? Snap a family photo at Bridal Veil Falls. Cool off on Utah Lake or the Provo River. No matter what you're searching for, you can find it in Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking about emergency preparedness. I hope by now you are taking notes, because this is information that could save your, literally could save your life, and you should follow it. If not, start writing. Write it on the coffee table, wherever you have to. Let me ask some questions. How do people get ready? What's coming up? I mean, it's Emergency Preparedness Month, so obviously we've got to have some kind of event going on.
Yeah, I wish I brought my Santa hat, because this is like our Christmas. This is a great time of year because we get to talk to residents all across the state about what they can do. There's a lot of great information at the bereadyutah.gov website, links to preparedness materials, even ways that they can share emergency preparedness on social media. We're very active on social media, and we're getting a lot of people sharing that preparedness information this month. It's a great place for people to start.
Now, you've got an event coming up. It's the Utah Prepare Conference and Expo. Where's that?
Yep, that's happening at the Southtown Expo Center in Sandy. and it's happening on the 27th of September from 8 to 8. You can go register at utahprepared.com, and there are going to be tons of vendors and tons of preparedness experts who are there so people can go and take classes on how they can be better prepared. Really great event, and ties in with a national event called America's Preparathon that'll be happening right there at the end of September also.
Now, I keep hearing about this earthquake drill, this shakeout thing. You got a little detail on that?
Yeah, it's another event that we do every year in April, and so we're just 7 months out from the next Great Utah Shakeout, where we invite every Utahn in the state to drop, cover, and hold on at the same time. So they practice those correct earthquake actions. My friend, Wade Matthews always says that, if you don't know how to survive an earthquake, the rest of your plans aren't going to matter at all. And so, we like to make sure that people know how to do that, and then what to do immediately after an earthquake. And so people can go to shakeout.org/Utah, and they can register to join the next Great Utah Shakeout as well.
Well, it goes back to personal preparedness and family preparedness. Are you ready? I mean, we've identified the earthquakes and the fires and the flooding. Do you know what to do in those key critical first moments that are going to get you by?
You have an analogy about that, don't you?
Yes, everybody knows the months of the year, and we're taught that from grade school on. And if you want to test somebody, just ask them, hurry, give me the months of the year in alphabetical order, and watch them.
I failed that test, I might add, with the very first month.
Yeah, and that just kind of demonstrates that we have all the information, but sometimes when it's presented to us in a different order, or the world suddenly changes, we lose a lot of confidence in the things that we do know. We know how to get by. It's just those initial protective action plans help you survive the first stages of an incident, and then you can start putting everything back in order.
A lot of people won't be able to make this expo because it's in Salt Lake, and I'm sure a lot of people in Carbon County are not going to be able to make that event. What can they do locally?
Reach out to your local emergency managers, your local public officials. Most of the counties and a lot of the cities in the state hold their own preparedness fairs every year. We receive money from the state and from the federal government to help put those on, as well as the local tax dollars that come. Most people have a preparedness fair at least every year or maybe every other year within their communities. And it's a great way to learn about everything from fires to flooding to just every day how you can prepare your own families in an emergency plan locally.
Well, listen, folks, that's just a tip of the iceberg, but you really should be prepared to know every single disaster, what might happen in your area, and have a plan that's memorized so that it's second nature to you. Find out more. Visit the websites, utahprepare.org. You can go to beready.gov. bereadyutah.gov to find out more. We encourage you to get involved and be prepared. Remember, local government is where your life happens. Be prepared and be part of the solution by being prepared. Thank you for joining us on the County Seat. Be sure to share this episode with your friends through social media. Go to our blog. We would love to interact with you on this topic, and we'll see you next week on the County Seat. If you like this video, then we invite you to subscribe to our channel, The County Seat. You can do that here. And we invite you to share with your friends. We also invite you to get all the latest up-to-date information by following us on our social media channels. And if all else fails, make sure that you watch The County Seat Sunday morning at 8:30 right here on ABC4 Utah.